Hello and welcome everyone to the Pennsylvania Association for College Admission Counseling Virtual College Fair. Thank you so much for joining us for this panel event to kick off today's session. I just have a few housekeeping announcements before we get started. Your camera and your microphone are both off, so our panelists cannot see or hear you today. However, you do have a Q&A button on your screen, and you can use that at any time during today's presentation to submit questions about any of the content they're sharing. This is one of many different sessions happening. Today, we've got 3 more sessions taking place after this where you can hear from a bunch of different institutions to hear about their programs and offerings. So we hope you'll join those. And then this presentation, along with all of the others, are being recorded and will be available within about a week at strivescan.com/Pennsylvania. I will put that link in the chat for everyone, but now I am going to turn it over to our presenters. Whenever you are ready, take it away.
All right, thank you very much. And good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. My name is Justin. I serve as an associate director in the Office of Admission at Carnegie Mellon University, and also as the president-elect for the Pennsylvania Association for College Admission Counseling, or PACAC for short. PACAC is an organization made up of college admission professionals, school counselors, community-based organization members, and independent educational consultants from around the state of Pennsylvania that are dedicated to supporting students in their transition to post-secondary education. We're so glad that you're able to join us for our virtual college fair program. We hope that you'll be taking advantage of some of the great opportunities to learn from institutions later on today. But we want to start out our day with a workshop on essay writing and highlighting your achievements in the college admission process. And for this workshop, I'm joined by my friend and colleague, Lauren, who I will now hand the microphone over to.
Thanks, Justin. So, hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Gordon. I'm the Associate Director of College Counseling at Winchester Thurston School, which is located in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And we're really excited to be here today to talk with you about college essay writing. And I know that we know that this can be a topic that can bring up some different emotions. For some students, they're really excited at the prospect of writing. But for some students, it's something that isn't as comfortable or doesn't come as easily, and they feel a lot of pressure around this particular piece of writing. And so we want to dive into that. We want to give you some tips and advice, hopefully give you a place that you can get started from, and feel really confident in taking this on as you work and pursue your next steps in your educational journey. So Justin, if you want to advance to the next slide and we can dive right in. So I like to start the conversation when I'm working with students around the essay in asking them to put themselves in the shoes of a college admission officer for a moment and think about why are we writing this? Why do we do this? Why is this part of the application process, right? And so if we're seeing it from the vantage point of an admission officer, this is really a chance for them to hear your voice, right? Because if you think about the other pieces of the application, which if you haven't explored that yet, right, a large part of the application that you fill out is going to be kind of little snippets, little tidbits of information about you, but not really any length of writing, not really a space where you can really express yourself, right? A lot of it is just kind of data entry of your name and your address and where you go to school and things like that. So in this space, right, they are looking to learn some different things, okay? So, first and foremost, it might just be, what are your writing skills, right? And that might particularly be depending on kind of their curriculum and what's going to be expected of students as writers. They might have some, expectations of, okay, how strong Is this students, how strong are these students' writing skills? What do we see in the writing sample that they're sending us? But they can also kind of get a sense of, okay, how do you think? How do you put together information? How do you kind of make an argument, or how do you present yourself through writing? It's also a space where they can get a sense of what's important to you. What is it that you value as a person? And what are the things that, you know, get you from day to day, or that feel really important to you? And kind of as a continuation of that, right? So what's in your head, right? But also what's in your heart. So, you know, on your transcript, they might see, okay, here is what this student is passionate about in terms of academics. But in this essay, they could kind of get a sense of, okay, but what's the depth of this person, right? What is it that makes, what do they feel passionate about? What excites them? What are some of the feelings that they have? What's a part of their identity? They can get some more depth, right? And ultimately, every institution is working to build a community, right? They are thinking about who they're bringing to their campus. They're thinking about who their current community is, and then who they want to add into that community, right? And so they're thinking about, okay, what is this person going to bring? Right? What are they going to contribute to this educational but also social community that we are working to build, right? Are they going to be a good student? Are they going to be a good roommate, right? How are they going to interact with the other students that are here in the community that we have built? So that might seem like a lot that's going through their minds, right, when they're reading your application. But in some ways, all those things, right, they're thinking, okay, who is this? Who is this? Right? Justin, anything that you want to add there from your admission office perspective?
Yeah, absolutely, Lauren. I think the summary that you've laid out here is absolutely illustrative of how this works. And you know what I'd like to highlight is some of those earlier observations about looking at the quality of writing, at the quality of argumentation. Really, what we're looking for there from good, clean writing and style is for those later things to come through clearly, to us to get that sense of who you are, how you would contribute to a community. The strength of your writing is all in service to that. What I mean is I'm not judging your ability to write a great college research paper or the next great American novel. You know, we have a lot of academic credentials out there that are going to help to judge your preparedness for the academic setting. The essays help us to really get to that sense of community fit and potential for impact that Lauren was sharing.
Perfect. Thanks, Justin. And we can go to the next slide. So then coming back to yourself, right? Coming back to your own shoes, and then approaching this from your vantage point, it can be tempting, I think, to the first thing that you do, look at the prompts. But I would urge you to approach this in a different manner. And to, before you even look at what are the questions that you could answer, I would ask you to think about what you want to share with an admission office, right? And certainly this works differently for different students, but I sometimes think that looking at those questions can distract from what maybe the most authentic story that you could tell, right? And so if before you even look at that, you start to think about and you put some reflection into, what do I want to convey, right? What do I feel like are values that are core to who I am, characteristics that are key to understanding me, important traits about myself, about my experience, about my identity, right? If this essay is going to be a vehicle to share information about me as a person, then what are those things that I want to have that admission officer know, right? And so maybe it is that I want to share how much I value friendship, or maybe it is that I want to share how much I value knowledge for knowledge's sake, right? And this could be, you could take this in so many different directions, and it really hinges on you, right? And what you feel is something that you would feel excited to talk about, that you would feel excited to share with others, right? And I think a really great way to think about this can be to brainstorm a little bit on your own. Okay, what is it about me? What makes me me? But then to talk to some really trusted people in your life, right? And maybe those are your really good friends, maybe it's your parents, maybe it's a mentor, a relation, right? And even asking them, okay, what are some traits about myself that what makes me me? And sometimes we don't see that in ourselves, but the people outside, our close friends and family, they really see those things in us very clearly. And you could even say, what are characteristics or values about me that you really hold dear, right? What stands out to you about me? And this can sometimes feel unnatural. We don't spend maybe a lot of time thinking about this, or it can sometimes feel like we're bragging, right? But no, this is the time for this, because this is a story. This is an essay about you. This is an essay about you. And so this is the time to start to think about that, if you haven't before, right? And to really think, okay, what is it that I want to share, right? And then once you have those things that you feel like, okay, these are key to who I am, now, how can I tell a story that captures those, right? So is there a memory that you have that would illustrate those traits about you, right? Or are there some objects in your life that you could write about that could then kind of be an illustrative way to share this thing about yourself? And that is, I think, a great way to get started in crafting something that will ultimately paint a picture of you. Okay, Justin, let's go to the next slide. So I do think that there can be a lot of pressure out there to feel like you have this story that is going to knock everybody flat, right? Or like, be like, whoa, we've never heard anything like this before. And some people will have a story like that, right? And that's wonderful. But a lot of people won't feel like they have a story like that. And that is 100% okay, right? Because it's that is not the thing that's going to necessarily make an excellent essay, right? You can write a really memorable essay about an everyday occurrence. And it is more about that the reader can feel your voice, hear your voice, that they can feel that you're telling a story that you feel excited about, that is authentic, that you come through in it. And it can be about any old everyday thing, and they can still remember it because you came through in it. And Justin, I know you have a great story to share here.
Yeah, absolutely. Years ago, there was an essay that came across my desk, so to speak, and it was a student who wrote about their daily interactions with their bus driver. They lived in a small community, and they'd had the same bus driver from elementary school through high school, and talked about how when they were very young and they started playing in the school band, they played the tuba, and they couldn't get the tuba on and off of the bus without the bus driver's assistance. And going through this essay, you're kind of wondering, okay, well, where's this going? It's very, slice of life. But then the big takeaway, the way that the student kind of tied it all together at the end, was how those everyday acts of kindness from their bus driver had been so influential, and how it instilled this desire to pay that kindness forward. And to Lauren's observation earlier about us asking, how will a student interact as a roommate? That was an essay that just had this strong sense of, this was a student that when one of their floor mates was having a tough time in the first year, this was going to be the student who was going to put their arm around their shoulders and say, hey, let's go have lunch. That you got that real sense of the kindness that they would contribute to the community. And again, it wasn't this life-changing story. It wasn't any unforgettable experience. It was very slice of life.
But you still remember it.
Many years later, yes, absolutely.
Yes, I think, and I have an essay like that I read 12 years ago about a girl dancing the chicken dance with her grandfather, right? But I can even kind of picture the paragraphs and some of the sentences. And again, right, it was kind of even a silly moment that she shared, right? A humorous moment. But her persona, her character and humor came through so strongly that I felt like she was sitting next to me. And I remember it was very meaningful, right? And so I think let go of the feeling that you must have done something amazing, overcome an incredible challenge, right? Or change the world. Those are not necessarily the things that we are going to remember or take away, right? It is more, if we can kind of picture your humanity, we can kind of say, I can see this person in front of me. They've captured themselves, and I feel as though I know them a little bit because of what they've shared in this essay. And that could certainly feel intimidating as well. But I think if you let go of that sense of pressure and you think, how can I simply write to share who I am and to kind of let another person into a little bit of my life. And that will truly be appreciated and valued in the process. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. I wanted to just kind of put some space around brainstorming and drafting, right? Because I think also students sometimes have this feeling that they're just going to sit down and start typing and this is going to flow out. And maybe for some students that does happen. But for the majority of students, there's a lot, or for what I would recommend also, right, is that you actually spend a lot of time in the pre-writing portion of this, really thinking about and drafting and setting yourself up for success in this way, right? And so this is not the same as an essay that as kind of the standard essay that you're writing for English class or history class, but the process that you go through to start writing could be the same, right? In the sense that planning out, you kind of your flow of writing, planning out a thesis statement even, right? Maybe maybe you're not going to actually include that thesis statement in your essay, but I would encourage you to think about what am I saying in this paragraph, right? So maybe I'm going to start by saying, can I sum up each of the paragraphs that I might write in a sentence, right? That I could kind of point to and say, here's the point of this paragraph, right? Here is what this paragraph is going to add to my story, or here is how it flows right into my next message, right? And so at the very start, right, your introduction might look different than it does in an academic essay, but you could still have that thought about, okay, I'm introducing my topic here and thinking about, right, what are the points that I then need to cover in the paragraphs that follow? I do want to take a moment to just throw out, this excellent free resource of the College Essay Guy. He is incredible in terms of the free resources that he puts out for students and for counselors in terms of sample essays, brainstorming exercises, tips, and advice. And so he's someone that I really value as a counselor in giving ideas and in framing ways to think about this. So after you watch this, I hope that you will also check out some of the things that he offers in kind of helping you on this journey of writing. So in our next slide, I wanted to just give you an idea of, what could the organization of this look like, right? And this is not, there's not a wrong or right way for you to organize this essay. This is simply an idea, right? A framework that you could start from in thinking about how you might flow this story, right? And so you might have heard this phrase before of the hook, right? You're going to start out the essay with something that is going to really bring your reader in. And I have read a lot of really excellent essays that start with something like this, where they're painting a scene for us. So they might give us some different senses, right? We might kind of hear what was going on in this scene. We might smell some smells. We might feel kind of what the writer was feeling. They might use dialogue. That can be a really interesting way to open. You choose. This can feel this can feel like creative writing, and for some students that feels a little bit intimidating. But I think just go with it and think about, okay, how could I bring the reader into this quickly? How could I get them seeing what I was seeing, hearing what I was hearing, experiencing what I was experiencing in this moment that I want to share that's going to illustrate my later points, right? And then flowing from there, right, you might need a short paragraph that gives some background information, kind of catches up, brings us up to speed on kind of what's going on. Let us know things, need to know things. And then you'll move into, okay, why are you telling us this, right? The rising action of, here is why this matters. Here is kind of the meat of my story, right? And then a conclusion, right? Where you try to wrap it up in a way that you think about maybe what does this mean going forward, right? Or why has this stuck with you, right? Or why has this ultimately been a really meaningful moment in your life or a meaningful thing to you? There are so many ways to compose this story, but if this helps you to get started thinking about the organization, fabulous. That's what, that is my hope, is that it gets your mind flowing a little bit on, what is this actually going to look like when I start writing. Okay, then moving on.
All right. So we're now going to transition and talk a little bit about some of the actual prompts. What are the questions you're going to be asked to address? Now that you've thought a little bit about the process, some of the stories or experiences that you might want to share. And one of the things that I hope you see from the samples that I'm about to share is that there is enough ability in these prompts that all those different stories that might be coming to your mind as you listen to Lauren's advice are going to fit in somewhere in this into this structure. So I'm going to begin with the general prompts that are provided by the Common Application. The Common Application is accepted at many colleges and universities around the country, as the name implies, and it provides a selection of essay prompts for you to choose from, each with a 650 word limit. Now, I won't read each of them in detail, but just to summarize a little bit, they give students opportunities to address integral parts of their background, identity, or talents. It can give you the opportunity to recount challenges or obstacles that you've faced. New next year, there's a prompt that really focuses on gratitude and reflecting on an example of gratitude. You're going to have opportunities to really reflect on your values and beliefs in a time that those were called into question or challenged. Opportunities to focus on specific accomplishments or events that sparked growth. To really just talk about your passions, topics, hobbies, concepts that really draw your attention. And then finally, the catch-all, open-ended, share on a topic of your choice. So if you had a story in mind and the earlier essay prompts don't speak to that story, that flexibility is built in here. Now, one word of advice with that flexibility, something that Lauren alluded to earlier is that you might want to write a thesis, even if it's not something that you're including directly in your essay. And for this open-ended prompt, I strongly encourage that. Write a prompt, write a thesis, and use it in your own editing prompt to hold yourself accountable to the story, the narrative that you wanted to share. Because I think the one pitfall with this open-ended prompt that I've seen is that it can become very meandering, and it can be hard at times to tell, well, what was the takeaway that the student was hoping to share? What was I supposed to learn? I also want to stress that for many of these prompts, they've been used for years. Noted the one is new. I have seen them all done very, very well. There isn't a prompt here that is the right choice. There isn't a prompt that I hope students will address. Use this flexibility to highlight what you have uniquely identified as the part of your story that you want to share. Don't get too caught up in trying to dissect a college's website against the essay prompts and to say, okay, which one's the right one? This isn't a game theory test, I promise you. To give you some other illustrations, there's another application platform out there called the Coalition application, similar to the Common Application, shared across a number of colleges. Again, I won't go into great detail here, but I use it as a reinforcing example that there's breadth and there's options within your essay prompts. Again, you're getting the opportunity to address things like character, to address times that you collaborated with others and focused on the greater good. Again, to talk about your beliefs or your values, or to talk about challenges that you faced. Again, the breadth that those different stories, those different narratives that may be coming to mind can be brought forward into this process.
And Justin, I just want to add that I often do an exercise with my students when looking at the Common Application or the Coalition prompts, where they share with me their essay, what they're going to write about, and then we see how many of the prompts it could actually fit with, right? And the average is that it could fit with 3 or 4 of the prompts, right? And it just depends on kind of what they want the emphasis to be, right? Or they say, well, I want to highlight this a little bit more. Okay, then I'll answer prompt number 2, right? So, you know, don't feel hemmed in by that. Know that you always have the open prompt, but also you can tell so many different, you can tell the same story and answer many of those and do it really well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Lauren. So what we're going to transition to now, these examples have been sort of that longer form, full page college essay. When you hear someone talk about the college essay, this is likely what comes to your mind. There also can be additional supplemental essay or short answer prompts. These tend to be very institutionally specific. So unlike the essays that I just talked about, where you may write one and submit it to several different colleges, these tend to be institutional. And I want to give you a few examples and a little bit of advice on some of these different prompts. Beginning though with a caveat. And that caveat is that these are prompts that I've collected over the years that I think are good illustrations that I find interesting, but I want to note that they may not reflect the current prompts being used by these institutions. So do your homework. Don't leave this session and say, okay, I know Georgia Tech's prompt and I'm going to start writing to it. The answer is, I don't know if Georgia Tech is still using this prompt. So I always start with that caveat. So supplemental and short answer questions, they oftentimes can fall broadly into three buckets. The first is the you prompt. These are prompts that tend to ask you to talk very much about yourself. Again, a few examples here. Stanford University has used a pretty brief 150-word prompt to elaborate on an extracurricular activity. Here at Carnegie Mellon, we've had an open-ended one that asks you to reflect on what you want to personally emphasize and to highlight something that the rest of the application didn't give you a chance to share about yourself. Georgia Tech's is particularly creative, very short, in 25 words or less. What's your personal motto? These all give you that opportunity to really share more of yourself. They tend to be a little bit more directed in terms of, I think, asking you to really reflect on specific aspects of your character, of your experience. I think some of the challenges here, though, can be, again, to the individualization. You'll probably see that it's unlikely that you could write one response that would fit for each of these three prompts. They've got very different word limits. They're asking you to reflect on those different aspects of who you are. Not every college will have these short answer supplemental questions, but many do. So again, do your homework, find out whether or not these will be a part of your process. The second bucket of prompts are more of the or why this field of study prompt. Instead of writing directly about yourself, you're now being asked to reflect a little bit on your connection to the institution or to the field of study. Boston College has a creative one that really focuses on the nature of Jesuit education. Again, Georgia Tech's pretty directed, asking you beyond rankings, location, and athletics, why Georgia Tech? Carnegie Mellon's focuses a lot more on the why this field of study, asking you to reflect on your major and what inspired that passion. These prompts, I think, again, the probably biggest drawback is that of all the buckets, these are the ones that tend to be the most unique, where there's going to be the least opportunity to take work that you've maybe done for one institution and to recycle it for another, because they tend to be very directed. That direction, though, again, I think creates a lot of structure around what you're being asked to address. It makes it important to stay on topic and to address that interest. I'll give you an example for that Carnegie Mellon prompt. We see a lot of responses each year that are making an impassioned case for Carnegie Mellon, but I have no idea what the student wants to study at the end of the response, right? And what we're really asking about there is that sense of what you want to study, not necessarily purely why you want to do it here, but why this field, right? So make sure you hold yourself accountable to that prompt. And then the third and final bucket is the creative one. These tend to be prompts that aren't as directly asking you about yourself or about your goals. They're more creatively looking into insight into your thought processes and into your identity. Tufts is a really interesting one. Put forth the question that science and society are filled with rules, theories, and laws, referencing the First Amendment, Occam's razor, the law of diminishing returns, 3 strikes and you're out in baseball, green lights mean go, pick a law and explain its significance. The University of Chicago has another very interesting one. This is the briefest short answer prompt I've ever really come across. Orange is the new black, 50 is the new 30, comedy is the new rock and roll, blank is the new blank. It asks you to fill in those blanks, what's in, what's out, and to briefly explain why it's being replaced. The advantage to these is for the creative soul. I think it really gives you that opportunity to showcase your creativity. These prompts, though, can be very open-ended. And I think for that reason, they can also be ones that it can be very challenging to hold yourself accountable to what you're trying to share and what you want your takeaway to be. So think about that in the responses. What am I saying? Is it what I meant to say? Or am I saying anything at all? And making sure that you do have that takeaway at the end of the process. Again, you may see a wide variety of short answer supplemental prompts. Make sure that you make note of these and you're leaving yourself the time that you need to respond to them. Lauren, anything to add here?
I'd like to add 2 points. I think that, again, the process of really planning out these essays, even though they are short, right? Even though this 250 words for the Tufts one, but going in with a really precise plan of here is what I need to say, here are the points that I need to get across. I think that pre-planning can really help you, as Justin said, make sure that you are saying what you want to say, saying something important, to you. I think another really great thing to consider is how can you use all of these prompts to your best advantage, right? So what I mean by that is thinking about the other pieces of your application. What have you already showed that institution, right? And what have you maybe not had a chance to show them yet that you want to highlight, right? And how could you use their supplemental essays to help you to do that, right? So I think that, sometimes you will, you'll feel like you're not sure what to write about for these or what you need to share about yourself. And I think in those instances, it is really thinking about your application as a whole and considering what have they not seen of me yet, and how can I use these as vehicles to express that information.
All right, thank you, Lauren. So we're now going to transition to one additional optional response that you may be asked to address at this time. And that's a question that's been added to both the Common Application and the Coalition, as well as some institutional specific applications that give you an optional response to address any impacts from the crises of the last year. Most prominently, this is an opportunity to address the economic impacts or educational impacts or community impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. But many of the responses have been broadly worded. If you have faced any other kinds of crises in the past year due to climate, due to the impacts of our nation's continued struggles with social justice that you want to address, there's an avenue for you to do so. What I want to really drive home here is that this is an optional essay, and that the idea here is for you to have that opportunity to contextualize your experiences. If the transition to remote learning was particularly challenging due to limited access to a quiet space in your home to learn, if you were unable to take advantage of summer research opportunity because the economic impact for your family meant you had to take a job, and you want to share that. You want us to understand your experiences. This is that opportunity to contextualize. Context is incredibly important to us at all times, but especially now. The past year has impacted each and every one of us in very different ways. While we've all been in the same storm, we've been on very different ships. And this helps us to understand that individual impact as we go through and review your application materials. Again, this is optional. So if you don't have that context to share, don't feel that you have to respond here. We're not, again, looking to judge whether or not you set out to solve the pandemic. We're not necessarily looking at judging whether or not you used your time valuably during the pandemic. We just want to understand if there have been specific impacts that you need to share. This is your avenue and opportunity to do so. You'll find this question will be in applications again in the coming year. So for the juniors, the rising seniors in the audience that you're about to go into this process, know that this question is going to be that opportunity before you. In terms of just some broad advice, I'm going to hand it back to Lauren at this time to close us out with a few closing words of advice.
Yeah, this is just kind of a catch-all of things that Justin and I, wanted to make sure that we touched on. First, I think sometimes there is a message that students need to make sure that they're telling an uncommon story, right? Or there can be a feeling that, well, lots of people are going to talk about that, so I can't talk about that. And I would say, I think it's more complex than that, and I wouldn't limit yourself in that sense, right? I think that you can tell a similar story to other people or have a similar topic, but if you tell it in your own way, then it's going to be unique to you. So I think I wouldn't get so caught up in that or worrying about that. Right. I think that it's more important. I think that you feel excited to tell the story that you're thinking of telling. Right. I think at the most, again, a really important thing is that you're making sure that the focus of your essay is you. Right. So sometimes if we are talking about someone who inspires us, or we are talking about a role model, at the end, the reader can end up feeling that they've learned more about that role model than they've learned about the writer, right? And so you can absolutely talk about other people, right? But at the end of the day, we have to feel as though we know you better than we know whoever it is that you're describing as part of that story. And then I just want to acknowledge that this can be hard, and that I hope that you grant yourself some grace in this process. This is likely not similar to most of the other writing that you do, and that can be really exciting, but it can also be really challenging. And I hope that you're patient with yourself in this process, and know that you can do it. Even if it feels challenging at times.
Great. Well, thank you. I know we're coming up on the end of our time together. I hope that this information has been valuable, and certainly hope that you will continue to take advantage of the PACAC program later on today, and want to hand it back to our hosts at StriveScan.
Wonderful. Well, Justin and Lauren, thank you so much for that fantastic session. That was so comprehensive and useful, and just really timely with our current situation as well. So really appreciate that. I also want to thank everyone for joining us here today. I hope that you found it as helpful and useful as I did. And we also hope that, as Justin as he stated, we hope that you'll continue with us for the rest of this program here because we're just getting started today. So we have 3 sessions taking place after this, and you'll be able to hear from a variety of different institutions from different locations and different subject matters. And then just a quick reminder that this is being recorded along with all of those other sessions as well. You can visit strivescan.com/Pennsylvania to find those recordings. That is in the chat for you as well. And then one final reminder is that when you close your screen today, you have a very quick 4-question survey that'll help us make sure that this event and future events are best serving you in the future. Okay, everyone, enjoy the rest of this fair. Lauren and Justin, thank you so much again. Have a great afternoon, everyone.